Hello and welcome to A Taste for the Road. My name is Scott and welcome to this 2020 BMW M340i. So when BMW introduced this or announced that it was going to be produced, I was keen, like a lot of people, to finally get a chance to get behind the wheel and give it a proper go and see what it has to offer and what makes it unique. As many of you will know, the F30 was not particularly well received, and so this G20 7th generation needed to basically fill some holes, and the question is, has it really gone ahead and done that? I think a great place to start is obviously up front, because we've got a quite sizable jump in power. So this is a 3-liter inline with a single turbocharger. The official BMW figures, which I think are absolute fluff, are 382 horsepower, 369 foot-pounds of torque starting at around 1800. 0 to 60 times range a little bit depending on whether it's the two-wheel drive, which this one happens to be, or you end up going for the all-wheel drive model, but basically in the low 4s, although frankly I've seen 1 or 2 reviews where they're able to achieve a figure of 3.8 seconds. And so there's no way with this car weighing what it does at 3,800 pounds or so. It varies obviously depending on what engine you choose and whether you get the Touring, which is no longer available here in the States, which is a pity. But still, this thing absolutely at anything close to sea level makes quite a bit more power than that. My guess would probably be around 420 or so, but either way, this thing is very, very quick. Both in its automatic mode and then of course using the paddles, which has been a pleasure earlier today. It's made it to a 8-speed automatic. Interestingly enough, one no manual, which is just a real shame. The previous gen did sell about 25% of units here in the US were manual boxes, and no dual clutch. Although I will say that this ZF 8-speed, or ZF if you prefer that, is very, very fast. Upshifts are instantaneous, or really quite close to it. Downshifts are a little bit slower, and obviously it varies depending on the mode that you're in. This car is particularly well equipped and does have the adjustable dampers, so naturally been playing with sport and comfort and just walking through various settings and whatnot. And you definitely do feel the differences between all of the different modes, which I wasn't quite sure, again, how clear those differentiations or differences amongst the different settings would actually be, but they are really quite substantial. Moving things into the chassis, thinking about this car as structurally and then moving on from there, it's a very stout car. It absolutely still feels as though it's been carved from a single billet of steel or aluminum, other materials. It just has that absolute feel of granite-like, if you will. The settings for the suspension, I think, are exceptionally well judged. Back here on these roads, I'm back in my old stomping ground of Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C., on some nice back roads, but none of them are perfect, and earlier today I was on some that were really choppy. And in comfort mode, this thing is genuinely comfortable for a sports sedan. Obviously, you throw it into the harder settings and it firms up as well. I did go ahead last year, I'll include a link up above if you'd be interested, test drive the current generation Audi S4, and this is more comfortable. In comfort mode, or in the comfort setting where the suspension is concerned, and basically traversing some of these uneven pieces of tarmac. Something else worth noting here are these brakes. Again, this car is particularly well equipped, so it's got the upgraded M-like brakes, and they are very, very strong. It doesn't feel as though you're really getting any fade out on regular roads. I obviously am not going to be tracking it today, so I can't comment on that. But nevertheless, it is something where you absolutely feel in complete control, which is just wonderful. An area where I'm a little bit frustrated, frankly, is the steering. As you may know, the 330 got a new rack, but the 340 here actually uses a modified rack from the F30. And you can tell. So in comfort mode, it's lighter weight. It tracks just fine. You can feel tire noise, but when you crank it up, you throw it into sport and whatnot, I don't get a lot of extra feel. There's additional weight, but there's not really a lot of extra feel and that tactile experience that I think those of us who are enthusiasts want, and frankly that I would expect to see in a car of this caliber, and obviously at this price point, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here. But overall, I would say it is an improvement over the F30. Not perfect, but I think in conjunction with the other changes that have been made here, other additions, it's overall really quite a nice package, and I'm certainly enjoying it more on these again uneven back roads than the Audi S4 that I test drove in 2019 last year. Moving the conversation here into the cabin, it's a very nice place to be, as well it should, given the price point of this particular car. I also like the spec of this one too, where it's got the cognac leather seats, two-tone interior with obviously the black on top. This one has the open pore wood, rather like what Mercedes is doing or has been doing for a while, and I really think it's a very nice place to be. We also have mood lighting if that's your thing, but I have seen other specs that say are in black that have the aluminum material here, and while I like aluminum quite a bit, I really don't quite care for it as much here. And again, with the way the coloring has been done, you feel as though the seats are sort of floating in a dark space. It just has a nice premium feel. Nice leather on the seats. The seats themselves, 14-way, are very comfortable. Lots of different changes and positions to make anyone, I think, comfortable, depending on what their needs are. You know, looking or moving into the infotainment system, that this has the Virtual Pro that you may be familiar with. I'm finding it less annoying than I thought, frankly. I figured that, like a number of people, where, again, there's just so much going on here. Some don't like the reverse tachometer. I don't really mind. It reminds me a little bit of what Aston did a number of years ago. The infotainment system here, the 7, if I remember the number correctly, from the for iDrive, also very, very nice. This screen nicely integrated into the dash that just doesn't stick out like the Audi does, and I think even Mercedes. They've done a better job with an exposed, non-retractable, infotainment system. Crystal clear, looks like my iPhone, frankly, and it's quick. It really is just a nice system. BMW has come, as they should, a long way with these systems, and even with a limited amount of prep, I've been able to find stuff that I wanted to, and so forth, and it's been a real pleasure to use. Also pleasurable has been just some traditional buttons, frankly, for heating the seat, heating this steering wheel if we wanted. It started at about 29 degrees this morning, but has warmed up nicely. There's just some controls where, again, you can just simply press a button, get something done. I feel have it be a little bit safer. And up. This is gesture control, which is a little bit frustrating here. So if I move my hand around a little bit too much, I've thrown on the radio. It's also giving me the equivalent of Siri. Let's see if I can turn that off. Yeah, there we go. So yes, I'll try and move my hands a little bit less, but it's tough. I tend to be sometimes a little bit expressive. Thinking about this car's competition and thinking about the value proposition, I don't see other videos or other YouTubers who are covering the value kind of conversation quite as much, and I like investigating it. The usual suspects apply here, quite obviously. There's the Audi S4, there's the C43 and 53 if we were to include the coupes and so forth. Obviously that would be the 4 Series here. Obviously a very enormously competitive segment around the globe. And then there are the others, the various products from Infiniti and from your other European makers who try to compete here. I'm thinking of, say, Renault or something like that. But again, I think for the benchmark products, it's those 3 coming from Germany, and this one obviously has always been the high water mark, particularly around its dynamics, etc. Even if the Audi has better furnishings, and I think the Mercedes obviously splits that difference between luxury and a slightly more sporty experience. within the luxury segment. It's an interesting one too here in the States. I can't comment elsewhere. We're transitioning into the value question. This is hardly an inexpensive car. So list price here in the States base is $55,000, which doesn't sound too bad, except that doesn't even get you heated seats. So if you add the heated seats, you add a whole bunch of other stuff. This thing has a lot of extras on it, which is lovely. But you can have that price zoom up to $69,000, which is about $1,000 more than where the forthcoming new M3 is going to start. It's true that if you were to wait 6 months, maybe a year, you could go ahead and negotiate some discounts. For those who don't know, some dealers that primarily sell through the internet here in the U.S., if you know what you want and you reach out to them with a very clear spec sheet, you can sometimes go ahead and save, well, thousands of dollars. I do know of friends who have bought cars like this in the past, or say an X3, and saved in the end about $10,000 here in the U.S. off list price, because what that dealer wanted to do was move units and move them efficiently. So it is available, and I think this car has been around long enough that some sort of discount or set of discounts is going to be available if you wanted to buy. Or obviously, though, most people are going to go ahead and lease this thing, and the aggressive lease rates that they have, because the resale value is strong, because BMW has a great financing arm, makes this car, I think, just a very compelling value for how people will buy it and how they'll go ahead and use it over, say, the XE from Jaguar, although that's not very competitive. Other products, those other firms, those marquees, are forced to chase this car, chase Mercedes, and to an extent also go ahead and chase Audi, which I think, again, just reflects the challenges around this space, this near luxury space, which is simply so competitive, but where the financing arm and the options around that are absolutely essential to BMW's success. And to their credit, they have absolutely gone ahead and pushed that to the nines here in the US. And you see, I don't know what the exact figures are, but across the board, my understanding is that for the German marquees, between about 85 and up to 95% of all their vehicles, trucks and sedans, cars, if you will, are all financed essentially through some form of lease option. So we are just outside of Marshall, Virginia. The human here could use a refueling stop. Been jonesing over a little bit of steak, so we're going to head over to a place called the Whole Ox. It's an organic butcher that's been around for a number of years. They also have, I'll call it a restaurant concept inside, basically about 10 tables and chairs for a little bit of sit down. They do some simple things, but do them very, very well, such as they grind their own beef and then make a really great burger. They also do, like I said, various forms of steak. They've got a short wine list. They also do some prepared foods as well. All around, just a really nice place with really high quality foodstuffs, and I think you should go ahead and know about it. And as you may know, if you've watched a few other of my videos, food and also coffee and a few other things are very important parts of the project here, and yeah, just something that I really enjoy. So let's go ahead and head over on to Whole Ox, a little bit of lunch, and then come back out on some of these roads, enjoy the blue sky here in mid-ish, late February. Sum this M340i up, see what we like, what we might think are compromises, and go from there. So I will see you there. Well, that was a very nice lunch at the Whole Ox. I did end up deciding to get the steak frites. It came with a brandy cream sauce. I was also roped into a glass of Montepulciano, which was definitely hit the spot. When they grill their steaks, have just a little bit of char on the edges, and I really, really enjoy that. Ended up swapping out the fries for a bit of salad. It'll be a traditional, or I should say a written review of the restaurant and of this car. I'll include links below in case you're interested in that, to include a little bit more information if you'd enjoy it. So transitioning back to this M340i and summing up its strengths and some of its weaknesses and whatnot, I think to basically focus first on some of its shortcomings and, if you will, personal frustrations on my part. Number one on the list absolutely has to be some of the fake stuff, frankly. The fake engine noise here. The car has quite a lovely exhaust note on its own, and I think should be allowed to sing with its natural voice. If you roll down the windows, it doesn't really need any fake piping in at all. I think the fake grille is particularly grates on me quite a bit. The fake exhaust ports, and again some of the little bits and additions here that just really don't flow any air at all. It just, for a car of this type and caliber, the fact that it is the sport version, it's frankly made by BMW. I do realize, of course, that other manufacturers do this as well, but it's just something I find enormously frustrating. I think the fact that there's a lack of a manual transmission car when they did sell reasonably well in this market with one is, again, just another source of frustration, and I think a shift in ethos and focus for this particular, now the latest and greatest 3 Series. But that's, counterposed with, or, in opposition to, many things about this car that are just downright excellent to, in some cases, just outright exceptional. That motor is a wonderful thing, and it just can catapult you down the road, or really it can just simply putter along and is just smooth but characterful. This B58 motor just needs to be celebrated while we still have it. It's a wonderful thing. And as much as I would like a manual transmission car, or would expect in this category for it to be dual clutch, the reality is this automatic 8-speed it's exceptional. It has performed flawlessly today at slow or fast speeds, in town traffic. No matter what you throw at it, its logic and its calibration just is simply fantastic. The BMW engineers need to absolutely be given kudos for it. It's just also, I think, the transition, the chassis and whatnot, the different ride modes, they are genuinely differentiated, and every one of them is still actually comfortable for real roads here in the United States, and obviously for some of you wherever you happen to be with also less than ideal pavement, is just needs to be absolutely celebrated, where so many products now just feel like going to be break your teeth or just rattle you in ways that is just not pleasant, unless you'd like to go into some form of sport or sport plus and really crank it up, which is great too. At the end of the day, is this the best 3 Series that BMW has ever made? And with that, I struggle actually a little bit. Not because it isn't the best version of this that they have ever produced. I think it is, an enormously competent and very, very good car. Where I struggle a little bit is around its size and its focus. So for context, when BMW first introduced the 4-door sedan within the 3 Series model, it was with the E330 back in the 1980s. And that car is 10 inches shorter than this one is. To provide additional context, the E34 5 Series, which was produced from 87 to 1996, is within 2/10 of an inch of this car. This 3 Series has just over the years, as we all know, just gotten bigger and bigger. And so for me, I think of this as being the modern day perfect sweet spot as a 5 Series. And that's because of, I think, its automatic transmission and other bits and luxury and whatnot that just makes sense as a 5 Series, but I'm not as convinced that it makes sense as a 3. I think the 2 Series, as others have discussed as well, is the modern iteration of the 3 Series, with, of course, the M2 Competition being the penultimate version of it. This is an excellent, excellent car, and I think for someone who is interested in something that is a little bit bigger, maybe not by American standards and for American roads, but for UK roads, European roads, roads in Asia that have been around a long time and where everything is a little bit tighter, this car, this 340, makes an enormous amount of sense and just, I think, hits an enormous sweet spot where a buyer of this, starting at 55, but realistically looking at into the low, if not mid-60s, with some trinkets and things like that. And with what's available, why wouldn't you go ahead and do that, even if you are leasing, with whatever your payment's going to be? But that, taken as a whole, I think it makes an enormous amount of sense for the compromises and the trade-offs that BMW and its engineers did make for this car, not offering the manual transmission amongst others, that for me, and I realize you may disagree, and feel free to comment down below, that this is just a superb 5 Series in 3 Series clothing that, again, would just be something enormously satisfying for a household to purchase or to lease and to enjoy with kids and all of the usual activities that are going to unfold in one's life, and that it just makes sense as a potent sub-M version of it, again, to enjoy. So with that, I think I will go ahead and close out this review. I hope you found it informative and enjoyable. Please give me a thumbs up if you can. Go ahead and subscribe if you'd enjoy that. Don't forget to hit the little bell so you'll be notified when new videos like this go ahead and drop. Most importantly, please go out and create your own adventure, whether that's to see something that you do know in a new way or something completely new, and share that with us in the comments below, or perhaps on Facebook or Instagram if you'd like to connect there. So with that, I think I will go ahead and bid you adieu, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao!